Coming up on today's episode of the Broadway Shuffle, we sit down with Texas Tech President Lawrence Schovanec. Before we get to the episode, Conrad, what were some of your favorite parts of our conversation with Dr. Schovanec?
Yeah, I think if you listen to the episode, you're gonna really enjoy the conversation. It was like five friends sitting around a table talking about Texas Tech and what we love about the place and where it's going in the future. I think my biggest takeaway was how much he really does love Texas Tech. He loves Lubbock. He loves West Texas. It's home for him and his wife. And I just really appreciated that there is someone at the helm of Texas Tech who's been there for a while and hopefully is there for many more years, leading us forward. That really loves Texas Tech and everything that we stand for as an institution.
Yeah, Conrad, I thought it's crazy to me how many things you can ask a university president. I mean, he's got his hands in NIL, revenue sharing, with enrollment, with capital projects, with Texas legislation, with the PUF, with the TUF, all of that stuff, and seemed to have an incredible grasp on what we're doing as a university. Made me way more confident in the direction Texas Tech is going. I came away very impressed with his answers, but I think the biggest one for me was when we asked him what his favorite restaurant was. He gave an answer that only a West Texas local would say, and I'm excited for you guys to hear that. I almost fell out of my chair. It was hilarious. So, Clayton, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed my thoughts exactly. I think it's really interesting to see like the role that athletics has in the university as a whole and how the president relates to that. I thought that was super interesting. I feel like it wasn't always that way in the past, or at least I didn't think it was that way. But like you said, like with the revenue sharing, the house settlement, the NIL, all that, it was super interesting to hear his parts in all of those. So I really enjoyed that part.
Well, there you go. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Texas Tech President Lawrence Schovanec. Hope you enjoy, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome to episode 75 of the Broadway Shuffle, and today we are joined by a very special guest. Texas Tech President Lawrence Schovanec is here on the Broadway Shuffle. Dr. Schovanec, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining the show.
I'm fine. Thank you, Brennan. I'm glad to be here with all of you.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to getting to sit down and talk with you. And one thing that we've, and I specifically wanted to start the conversation with was how you got to Texas Tech. I think a lot of times as former students and as people, we hear your name, we see pictures of you, but we're like, man, what is it? How did President Schovanec get to Texas Tech, and what was his career path coming forward? So I'd love if you would start just by sharing how you got to Texas Tech, and also what is the career path of really becoming a president of a university?
I'll be glad to do that. But if you don't mind, I did tell somebody I would give him a shout out.
Okay, please go ahead.
I went to dinner with Kenny Perry, the associate head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Jackie Izell. And Jackie's a big fan of your show. And she knew I was going to be on. And so I said, Jackie, I'm going to let you in.
That's awesome.
Well, shout out to Jackie. Thank you. That's awesome.
We love Jackie and Kenny.
Yeah, that's great to know they listen to the show as well.
It turns out a lot of people do.
Hey,
if you could just convince my wife to listen, that'd be
that'd be
first
great.
Step. Yeah. So.
Some people have made comments about it. I was raised in Oklahoma. I went to a small school there. My dad was a farmer and then later became a college professor. And he did that so that all of my brothers and sisters could afford to go to college. There were 12 of us.
Wow.
And my mother graduated from Oklahoma State back in 1950. She's a farm girl, which was kind of unusual to go to school back then, as she did. And she had all these children. And then after she had all the children, she went back and became a public school teacher, went back to college and got a master's. And my dad, I think, was trying to figure out, how could I educate these kids? I'll become a professor. Reduce tuition. So that's what he did. He went to Oklahoma State, got a graduate degree, and got on at a small school. That's where I went. And from there, I went to A&M. And when I was at A&M, the faculty suggested I go to Indiana University, a really strong math department. So I went there, and then I didn't want to go back to A&M as I've been a student. So Tech had a good math department, and I applied here. And I came for 1 year, and then I went on leave to A&M. Came back to Tech, then I went back went back to A&M, and I owe a lot to the people there that helped me in terms of my research, and which was an important part of getting promoted. But I could feel the difference in the culture. Now, and, it's a cult, but there was something very special about this place. And I met my wife when I was a visiting professor at A&M, and she took a job at Baylor as Patty. And then eventually she weakened and agreed to get married and came up here. And you couldn't get her out of here with a crowbar now. She loves this place, and she loves the students. And so Tech is our life. We had 2 boys. Neither of them went here because they probably didn't want to be around us that much. And one wanted to play football and baseball. He didn't have the DNA to be a Division I player, but he was a good athlete. He played up in Wisconsin, then Ohio, and that's how he got into coaching. And the other boy went to WashU. Now he works for SpaceX in Florida. The odd thing is, both of them now live in Florida. One there on the East Coast, and one down in Boca Raton, where Tyler coaches for FAU.
Very neat, man. I do know one thing. Patty is. Yeah, Patty is beloved on campus. She, one of the professors that, and this is not just tooting your horn, I hear so many great things about her as a professor. I know plenty of, fellow students that really enjoyed having her. And I think that's a real testament. Somebody that loves education that much and loves educating students. That's a really, really rare combination.
When I was chair of math, of course you have student evaluations every year, but I would always walk down the hallway, stand outside a door, listen to somebody teach. And I think when the first times I listened to her, I have to admit I was impressed. She's very funny. She's a good teacher. I thought, God, I wish she could be more like that at home. She was so sweet. But she is a great teacher, a much better teacher than I was.
Yeah, Dr. Schovanec, you interact with students on a pretty regular basis. One of the things that I remember from my time at Tech was different students talking about their different career goals, what they wanted to do. Was being the president of a university ever something you wanted to do? How does that happen? Does that come in your brain one day, or is it just kind of one door leads to another, and the next thing you know, you're the president of Texas Tech University?
To the questions you posed, I'd say no. I loved the university life, and I enjoyed mathematics. If you want to be a math professor at Tech, these people are good. We have really strong faculty, and but I wasn't going to set the world on fire. But I was decent, and I enjoyed it very much. I loved having graduate students. I enjoyed teaching, and that was what I wanted to do. And I became chair. When the chair we had went on leave, and I enjoyed it, and I think I did okay. And so the dean moved over to the provost's office, and she asked me if I wanted to be the interim dean, and I said no. No interest in doing that. And but she asked me again, and so I agreed to do it. And I told the associate chair, can I leave all my books in the office, because I'm going to be back in about 6 months. This is temporary. I've never been back. I may have been in that. And then I was the dean. They did a search. I got the position permanently. And then after 4 years, I was asked to be the interim president, which is kind of, it was a bit of it's not the typical route one would take. And I enjoyed that, but it was clear I wasn't going to be a candidate for the job permanently. And so I was kind of in a dilemma. What am I going to do? And I was able to then become provost once they did a national search, and I did that for 3 years, and then I became president. But I never said one day I want to be president or one day I want to be a provost. My attitude, I enjoyed every job I had, but if people would say, how do you set that kind of a career path? I would say to them, do the job in front of you and do it as well as you can. And then sometimes things work out. Sometimes you have to be lucky. I was lucky. I had good people around me. But just take care of business. And you know what? That's what Red Raiders do. They take. Even
Very
though
nice. That's good advice. When you first became president in 2016, you had plenty of initiatives that you wanted to start. How do you feel like you and your team have accomplished those so far at your time at Tech?
So what were the initiatives? In 2010, the Board of Regents and the Chancellor at the time, Ken Hans, had set this aspiration of having 40,000 students. So when I became president, the enrollment was about 35,000. But I was aware that the alumni were cognizant of this goal. And I think in some ways, growth sort of conveyed the impression, it said something about the vitality and strength and progress of the university. Growth is important in many ways, but quality always is the preeminent concern that we have. So I thought it was important to hit that goal of 40. And also, Texas Tech had a growing research enterprise. I wanted to be a Carnegie Tier 1 school. We wanted to be a Hispanic serving institution. And so we did all of those things. And also, I enjoyed the prospect of raising money when I was a dean, connecting with the alumni. And so I knew I wanted to be involved in fundraising. So Texas Tech has been, it gained status as a Carnegie Tier 1 school. It was just reaffirmed just this last week. The new Carnegie rankings came out. Now to be R1 is not such a big deal. We have our sights set on AAU membership. It's tough. We're in the midst of a campaign. It's going very well. And we're reassessing, our long-term plans for enrollment.
Yeah.
The one thing, if you don't mind, I would say, I always felt that Texas Tech was so much better than the reputation that some people had of it as I visit with other presidents and administrators. And so I really did want to try to elevate the stature and reputation of the university. And you do that as a group. So many people are involved. But I do think the visibility of Texas Tech has been enhanced quite a bit in the last 10 years for many reasons.
Man, that's excellent, and congratulations. I know that 40,000 mark was a huge deal whenever we hit it, and then obviously the Tier 1 research status. You blew up my walk between the Rawls and Masscom for that big new research building, but I think it was a worthy endeavor. Small sacrifice.
Yeah, hang on. There's going to be a lot of changes on campus in the next few years as we blow up a few other things.
Okay, well, very exciting. You talk about enrollment. That's one of the things that you mentioned. I know the big buzzword in academics is the enrollment cliff, and we don't have to really dive into that. But when we think about some ancillary pieces to a university, one of the big ones that involves the alumni is athletics. How much of a role do you play in athletics? How much does athletic success play into the university's path moving forward? Talk a little bit about that partnership between the university's athletic department and the university writ large.
I think we all know the importance athletics plays and the visibility of the university. And you hear those phrases people use over and over. It's the front porch, it's all this sort of stuff. No doubt about it. I remember the first time I think we went to the World Series. That week, we had hired our first member of the National Academy of Science. And I tweeted that out. That back then it was called tweeting. And then I had also issued something about going to Omaha. And then I was going to an event a few days later, and I looked at my account. I think there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people who had seen and liked the baseball thing. Maybe 40 people had commented on the National Academy. It was a lesson about the visibility, and you know that. So there's no doubt Texas Tech's reputation has been enhanced by the excellence and some of the progress of our athletic programs. I mean, just look what happened recently when we signed the young lady from Stanford. Mm-hmm. We just won Big-12 yesterday softball. That was a great move. There were a couple of articles in the Athletic, but also in New York Times, which is kind of the same thing, about Texas Tech getting a student from Stanford. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting the things people said. And I remember when we went to the Final Four, we were a headline in the New York Times. And, that's worth a lot.
Yep.
And it does help recruit students. But I would say it's also what's very important is at Tech, and I think you four gentlemen would know this, when you go to an athletic event, it feels different. The students, they love being there and they love being with each other. And it's part of an attraction to come to Tech. It's a special culture. And I've told this story many times, but I met a young student once that came to my office. Her father asked me to see her. I didn't know that she was blind. Mm-hmm. And so when she came to see me, I asked her how it was going. She said, great. Why? Students are so kind. Faculty are so helpful. The staff are so helpful. But then I asked her, what's the favorite thing you like to do other than your academics? And she said, go to football games. That really struck me because, she experiences it in a different way, but she feels it. That says amazing. A lot about the athletic experience. So it's important. Now, I think there's some, if you look at applications and such, you can't just depend on athletics. We've become much more sophisticated in how we reach out through our social media, the Office of Marketing and Communications and the enrollment management has become much more sophisticated in how we do reach people, how we manage that enrollment funnel. But there's no doubt that being on the national stage helps us a lot.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that sophistication and how you reach out to people. How has that kind of evolved in the last 5 years?
Well, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we began to, I don't want to make a pitch for a company, but began to really invest in Salesforce. And we issue, I think it's 10 or 15 million communications a year to the students and the families that are in our funnel. Now we'll end up getting, say, 35 to 40,000 applications a year. It's up this year quite a bit. But they communicate with those students and those families like every week. Hey, happy birthday. This is something you might be interested in. You got to really connect with the students. And you have to try to convey what it's like to be here. Matt Dewey, who's our Vice President, Marketing Communications, just came in a few days ago and left on my desk a lot of things they've put together, working with 160 over 90. That's going to be part of our new marketing campaign. You mentioned the cliff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a real issue. Mm-hmm. And now, we had an enrollment record last year, but in the last 3 years, our enrollments, the increase has been very, very minimal. And we, in fact, made a presentation to the chairman of the board this week because he wanted to talk about enrollment. That's Chairman Campbell. And, he made a comment when we got on the call. There's a business aspect of what we do. We got to worry about the financial and how do we raise, what's the source of revenue, enrollment, advancement, and then also the money that the faculty bring in through grants and things like that. So we have to pay attention to enrollment. We just completed an enrollment plan to go out to 2028. Then after that, the demographics in the country start to look more positive. In the next 3 to 4 years, only 5 states will have an increase in high school students. Even Texas will be flat. After that, it starts to go back up. So we do have a goal out there. I'm not going to say what it is right now. I don't want it to be that. But, I think you do have, you gain some political leverage and some capital when you have a certain critical mass. And I'm not saying 50 is the critical number, but I think being vibrant, I think it speaks, again, to the health and vitality of the university. So we're going to have healthy growth. It's going to be purposeful growth. We're going to grow our graduate students. And whatever we do, we cannot compromise, I think, the success of the students. And we've tried to make a big deal of this recently. Last year, we had a record graduation rate, both 4-year and 6-year. If you look at U.S. News, they use the 6-year rate. We hit 69%. 10 years ago, it was 59. Wow. Our 4-year graduation rate last year was 51. 5 years ago, it was 38. And if you look at the AAU schools, it varies from a little over 63 to 82%. We're 69. So
right there.
That's where we need to be, and we can't compromise that.
One thing, and I know we have another question that we want to get to, but I think something you touched on that really speaks to me is just the diversity of experience that you can have at Texas Tech and why it's so, when you mentioned a vibrant student body, that's immediately what I think of. And I run into plenty of tech alumni, both here in Lubbock and in other spots. And it's funny how we went to the same institution and can have wildly different paths and experiences, but both of us come away having an excellent experience. And I think that's, a testament to you and your leadership team on, there are a lot of different things that you can do in this institution. We don't just do agriculture or business or engineer or whatever it may be. Lots of different things. And I think that's really impressive. And I commend you and your team for building that out for the student body.
I would love to know your stories. I know 2 of you graduated in 2020 and 2 in 2019. Were you all friends?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all met our freshman, sophomore years in college. Friends for about a decade now. So all met at Texas Tech.
Which we hate to age ourselves like that, but yeah, it was a decade ago that I entered Murray Hall. It's a wild place.
Yeah. I think it's really neat that you're doing this. I think it speaks to kind of your connection and affinity to tech. And there's so many stories like that. But the point you mentioned, Zyler, about the breadth of experiences you can have. First of all, and I don't say this in a patronizing way, our students are impressive people. I see it in so many ways. I decided to walk through the School of Music on Friday because we're going to have to make some improvements in the facilities there. It's 4:00 on a Friday. It was bustling with activity. And I walked by one room and they were listening to music, to about 20 students in there. And the professor came out. So it's just a group of students that get together Friday afternoons. They're not necessarily music majors, all of it, to talk about their interest in music.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
And so I put my head in the door. I said, have any of you heard the Beatles? What about the Rolling Stones? I am so out of it. But I was at an event earlier that day for the Whitaker College of Engineering, and they gave an award to an outstanding student. So when that person spoke, I thought, this could be another Ed Whitaker. I see it over and over. Maybe, I think 3 of you were from Rawls. Who's the next Jerry Rawls among us?
Yeah. It's really impressive. And sorry, I kept interjecting, but I know we've got some other stuff that we wanted to get to.
Yeah, President Schovanec, and if hopefully you can hear me now, okay. I want to transition to the NIL quickly with athletics. You'd mentioned the portal class briefly and how important athletics still is to the university. But in this changing landscape of what college athletics has become and what it is, what is your role in this process? I mean, we see the news reports, we see crazy dollar signs and donors and the Matador Club, but how do you kind of take on what college athletics has become? And do you have a big say in what goes on, or is it really a separate process between the athletic department and the university itself?
Well, first of all, Kirby and I have a great working relationship. He's a very dear friend. I love athletics. My wife does as well. And so it's natural to want to see it thrive and all. So what's the role of the president? Well, the president and the AD probably need to be connected at the hip. But he calls the shots when it comes to making decisions about who we're going to hire and this sort of thing. We work very closely as we began to transition to this revenue sharing environment. So you have the NIL money that was managed through the Matador Club, which is a 501c3. Now that's probably going to move under the university once Judge Wilkins finalizes the House settlement, and you've all probably been following that. She keeps putting it off. Now there's some issues, roster limitations. But so you have the NIL money, then you have the revenue share. And Tech has been a big time player. I mean, Regent Campbell, has gained national attention for and many people who supported him. I could go on and on. Dusty Womble, Gary Peterson, John Sellers, a whole host of people, so many others. By just starting that list, I realize I'm forgetting names that need to be mentioned. So you have those that were raising money through personal philanthropy. And then what was Tech's role going to be when you talk about revenue sharing $20.5 million? Because you probably have heard that's the number. Well, if any unit on campus was hit with that kind of a reduction in their operating money, we would have to get involved, and the school did. Of course, the board provided a lot of guidance of what they wanted to see. So Texas Tech University has increased their financial support to athletics. But if you look at what we're doing compared to many other schools, we're kind of in the middle. There are very few schools that don't have to support athletics, and we're talking support beyond the student athletic fee. But I think you've seen what's happened with the approach that Tech has taken. The attitude, we're not just going to survive, we're going to thrive. We're going to get to these next few years, and however the dust settles, we'll be standing and we'll be in a better position. And look what's already happening.
Right.
Won Big 12 softball yesterday. We won Big 12 women's tennis. We won Big 12 indoor track. I go on and on. Got to the Elite Eight, et cetera, et cetera. And so Tech is doing very well. I think the aspirations for football are very, very high. And that's the big gorilla in the room, football. And so I think I'm very positive about where Tech stands now. The other day, somebody sent me a comment by the Indiana University football coach. And since I went to Indiana, I thought it was kind of interesting to see this. It's a great school. Been around. It was founded in 1825. Tech was founded in 1923.
Jeez.
Yeah, and it's a great academic institution. But I'm paraphrasing here, but that coach said, we have a nice pot of money, but we can't compete with the big boys. He mentioned Oregon, Ohio State, Texas Tech.
Wow.
That's common. Somebody in the Big Ten would say we can't compete with Texas Tech. But I think if you talk to Coach McGuire, he'll say the same thing. When they were recruiting the portal, people who were looking at the big SEC and Big Ten schools, they see our facilities, the Womble training facility, it's second to none anywhere. And so the NIL has been part of the whole larger investment in athletics. And I think it will have to find some more reasonable operating mode. Right now, there's still an element of the wild, wild west, but we're fortunate that we have very generous supporters. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen this fall.
Yeah, Lawrence, you mentioned just being proactive. That's something that I've been very complimentary. You and Kirby seem like you've been really aligned at being in the forefront of this field. Another area that was kind of really disruptive for athletics 2 years ago was the whole realignment with the Pac-12 and the Big 12. If you can, and what you can speak on, talk a little bit about how that all unfolded with Arizona, Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah eventually joining the Big 12.
Well, it started really before that when Texas and Oklahoma said they were going to leave the Big 12. I had just become chair of the board, the Big 12 board of directors. And so, you all take your turns doing that. 2 weeks after I took on that role, Texas and Oklahoma say they're leaving. This is a true story. I came home. I called the old Oklahoma State coach, president, because he was a very wise person, got his advice. And I stepped into the house, and Patty said to me, well, it didn't take you long to screw this up. And that was a very unsettling period. To Bob Bowlesby's credit and to the board, we stuck together and we went out and got the group of 5 schools: Cincinnati, Houston, and
UCF,
BYU,
UCF, yeah.
and UCF. And then we hired Brent Yormark. I'm a big Brent Yormark fan. So I was part of the process that presented the 3 finalists to the board. Brett brought a whole new range of skills and initiative and energy, and saying nothing disparagingly about Bob. He was a great man and he did a good job. But Brett, when he was interviewing for that job, he made it clear, I'm going to work every day to make the Big 12 one of the best. We knew we had a task ahead of us with the position of SEC in the Big 10. But what did he do? He negotiated the Texas and Oklahoma leaving, and that gave us more flexibility then to jump ahead in the queue to start negotiating a new media deal. And at the same time, bringing in the 4 Power 4 schools. So all those things, I don't remember exact sequence of events, but they were all related. Getting settled with OU in Texas, getting a new media deal, adding the Power 4. Look what he did, and look what didn't happen in the Pac-12. Says a lot. So
Right.
That was a very unsettling period. Who knows where we're all going to end up in 5 years?
Yeah.
You know, they talk about a super conference. It's going to depend kind of on the legislation that comes out of D.C., what they may want us to do in terms of getting things that relate to federal laws that preempt state laws and NIL. You know, there's like 30 or 35 such plans. Ted Cruz was here Senator Cruz was here a couple of weeks ago, and I saw him there at the Chaparral. And he did say, and I've been to his office, he says, we need federal help. How often do we say we want the federal government to help us, but we do?
Yeah.
Right. I think you need something that gives you some protection. And people don't like anything that sounds like a union, but you got to have more of an NFL model where you have caps and such. And so also Regent Campbell has been a leading voice in that way. And then also, I think you got to go back and look at the way college football sells its product versus the NFL. There was this thing called the American Broadcasting Act back in the 60s that enabled the AFL, the American Conference, and the National Football League to kind of get to the current state of affairs. We need something kind of like that in college football where every conference is not working against each other as they negotiate their media deal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very much kind of unsettled right now, but I will get through it. People enjoy college athletics too much for it not to work. It will work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You mentioned AAU status a couple times in the conversation. I know that's more of a goal for the university, but also an aspect of realignment, especially with the Big Ten. Do you believe that's obtainable in the next 10 years? And what kind of goes into receiving that status?
Yes. In August, we're going to present the final version of what we call our roadmap to AAU. It's a 10-year roadmap. I think I hope we'll achieve it before then. But, it's not just based on the facts. Yeah, there's politics in this. And so if you look at who was just added recently, I think it surprised a few people who got in, who didn't. So, but it's not so much achieving that designation. Tech will grow its research expenditures that will have benefit for the state and for the nation. It will elevate our reputation. As we pursue that goal, the value of your degree will go up, and you already see it. And so there are legislators and members of our board, once the Texas University Fund was established, who reached out and asked that your very question, Clayton, when are you going to become AAU? And we're very fortunate. We have great leadership from Senator Perry, Speaker Burrows, and Representative Tepper. Our board wants to see Tech make progress, and we will. So we'll pay attention to that. We work on it all the time, but we'll never forsake our first priority. And I'm not just saying it. It's the students. We never want to lose what makes Tech a special place, chasing AAU status. And it can be done.
Man, that's really encouraging to hear. You briefly name dropped the Texas University Fund, and I know not all of our listeners are going to be aware of what that is. Talk a little bit about that legislation and how it's benefited Tech this academic year.
So They created what was called the Texas University Fund. It was about a $4 billion fund. And originally there were 4 schools, Houston and Tech. There were 6 shares. We each get 2 shares, and then Texas State and North Texas get 1 share. That could change. The first year we got money about a little over a year ago. We got $44 million. It's up to $60 million now.
Wow.
But to put that in perspective, the tech budget's a little over $1.3 billion. So $40 million doesn't really. I'm great.
It's similar to my personal financial situation. $40 million doesn't really move the needle for me either. So
that's kind of an arrogant to say. Very great. It's changed the way we do business. And it also, I think, changes the way some people perceive the university when we're recruiting faculty. They know we have the Texas University Fund. They know our aspirations are to go to research enterprise. So we put that money into more than 20 new positions will be funded off of that. We're providing more support for graduate students, more facilities. And so we're growing our research enterprise. And we always do it trying to make sure we're doing things that really matter, very practical. It starts with issues in our backyard: agriculture, water, energy, national security. And so this legislative session, we put a whole lot of effort, especially in the latter area, national security.
Very neat. Yeah. And, we don't really have to get into this if you don't want to, but I know that the PUF is another thing that's always highly contentious when you talk about, Texas politics and university funding. Your thoughts on the PUF, generally speaking?
Well, the tough isn't the same as the puff, but it's a start. And, if you spend your whole life looking around at what people have, does that really help you? You want to just look at your situation, make the best of it, and move forward, and don't take a passive attitude and say we can't have more. Look, the endowment at Texas Tech University is about $1.1 billion. The system is about $2 billion. And then you hear of these schools like UT, A&M, Ivies, $30 billion. Do I resent them? No, it's not. We've been at it a long time. The PUF was established a long time ago as a different. And so I think the state recognizes there needs to be more money for other institutions. It's a matter of really opportunity and fairness to the students who may not be in the A&M or the UT system. So I don't get frustrated by that. We're looking at how we can make the best use of the tough, and also always as we go to the legislature, trying to secure resources that grow the opportunities for Texas Tech. And I'm really optimistic about what will come out of this session. We have about 3 weeks to go. I look forward to sharing that with the public when it's all said and done.
Man, that's really exciting.
Yeah. I think one thing all of us can agree on, and Red Raiders everywhere, is that we want to see Texas Tech in the best position possible. You've mentioned that a couple of times. We all feel that way, whether it's athletics or just university, how it's perceived and the things that are going on there. We want to see it do well, and it is, and it can do even better because there's always room for improvement in so many ways, and you want to chase something that's building towards something even better. The On and On campaign kicked off last year. Talk a little about that. What's that going to do for infusion of life into the university, and where that's going to help us out in some different areas over the years to come?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. This is the first campaign that Texas Tech has ever had. Think about it. We're 100 years old. This is our first campaign. Now, the system had a campaign under Monford. The goal was $500 million. And then Hance, when he was just chancellor, it was $1 billion. Our goal for this campaign, running 8 years, was $1.2 billion. As of last week, we're about a little over 4 years into the campaign. We've already gone over $800 million. There's more. We're going to go well beyond $1.2 billion. And what I'm most proud of is we have 4 areas. One's called Transforming Lives. That's scholarships. One's academic excellence. Then there's the campus and community. That's facilities. And then Fearless Champions. That's athletics. But about $400 million of that money so far has gone into scholarships and academic excellence. Since we started this campaign, we've created about a little over 400 new endowments, scholarship endowments. That is our first priority, to have more resources to support more students. You talk about the cliff, the competitive nature of recruiting. That's important, but also it helps offset the cost of education. And, so the campaign is, I think it's more than just, this may sound disingenuous, in raising money. Well, then why are we doing it? It's about also taking the message and story about Texas Tech out there. We have an event this week in Dallas, and it's going to be hosted by Carl and Marilyn Toma. They went to Oklahoma State, but they started a program here called the Toma Scholars. It's for students from rural areas that are first generation. And I think we're funding 12. They get a full ride.
Wow.
It's going to grow. Those are examples. We were at the engineering luncheon last Friday. John Bick was there. John Bick recently made a very large gift, multi-million-dollar gift, to reestablish construction engineering technology. So that's an example of academic excellence. So the campaign really makes a difference in things we do for students and for academic programs.
Man, a couple questions that I had, when you're speaking about that, you have your hand in a lot of different things. We've asked you about incredibly complex, the House revenue sharing, managing endowments, legislative session. I don't know how you have time to do all of that. This is more theoretical and forward-looking. What's an issue that you think is coming down the pipeline that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, that Texas Tech and you and your team are actively working to solve and to kind of work through?
Well, I think we always have to be cognizant of that narrative that you hear more and more about. As the cost of college education has gone up, people ask, college, is it worth it? And you four are examples of why it is. And every graduate we have goes out there and makes a case for the benefit of college education. You think about more than your professional aspirations, but also the friendships you have, the way it changes your life, your attitude about life, the way you look at the world. That's one of the great, I'm not saying that it's the only route to a fulfilling life. Some people, we need people in fields, people who come and fix my electricity and do those things. But there's a whole set of experiences that make a college education so valuable. So we have to constantly be making sure that we're good stewards of the resources we've been given, and that we don't forsake the values and the characteristics that alumni value in the university. And there's a lot of social issues going on, right now. But I say every day we get up, make sure we put students first, and those other things kind of take care of themselves. There's always been controversy. Now there have been changes in education with the new administration, but it's all manageable. And we need to be sensitive to the messages we're getting. You ignore the messages from Austin or DC at your own peril.
Sure.
And so I think that's one of the great things about Tech. Our students have a lot of common sense. The university remains focused, I think, on things that matter, producing graduates that are going to go out and outwork anybody. So that was I don't know if I answered your question, but I say we need
that's a great answer.
That we stay focused on things that really speak to the value of higher ed, things that
That's awesome.
really matter.
That's really cool. We'd be remiss if we did not ask you at least one more personal question, and that's, how's Tyler doing down in Boca Raton? How is he enjoying working for Kitley down there?
Okay.
How are things for him?
Well, he's, of course, Florida Atlantic is in Boca Raton, but he lives about 30 minutes away because he couldn't quite afford to live in Boca Raton. but my son, who lives on the other side of the state, right below Cape Canaveral, said Tyler's living way beyond his means. Went over there to see him. He loves it. I've seen some podcasts, some interviews he's done, and I'm very proud of him. Uh, he, I saw something the other day, and he just spoke of how lucky he's been. It started with Cliff Kingsbury.
Sure.
He started here, and then he went to Houston Baptist with Zach, and he really is close to Zach. He thinks Zach is really so deserving of the position he's in. But there's so many coaches he could say, and Kenny Perry's one of them. The list goes on. He's doing great. I think he loves it. He says the quality of life there is very, very good. And they don't have the resources of Tech, and he's a special teams coordinator, which is kind of weird because he was a quarterback in high school and college. I saw him play one special teams play in high school. They were playing Friendship. There's this guy, he was a linebacker for Friendship, and he played for Tech. He was pretty good. Tyler was the up man for a punt. And that guy, I'm not going to say his name, he came through there. He hit Tyler, and he flew like 10 yards back. That was his one special teams experience.
Well, he knows how exactly not to line up for that play, so he'll have experience there.
Who knows?
Well, President Schovanec, we're super thankful. We do have some rapid fire items that we want to get to, and we think the students and Red Raider alumni writ large deserve to hear these answers. So, one-word answers, short explanations. We'll fire through these pretty quickly. Your current favorite restaurant in Lubbock, what is it?
I can't give you. If I'm by myself, I'm going to go to Taco Villa.
Let's go. That is spoken like a true West Texan. That is a great answer.
What's Miss Schovanec's favorite restaurant?
I would think we should say that we're not country club people, but we like to go there because it's quiet and we can take our friends there. And when I'm hard of hearing, so I don't have to say, huh. we
Very
like
nice.
to take a country club.
Okay.
Very cool. Well,
Does not look like a country club person.
if you're a coffee drinker, who's got the best coffee in Lubbock?
Well, I love the atmosphere down there at J&B's in my neighborhood.
Okay.
And I could go on and on. There's a lot of places. So I just stop on my head.
Okay. Nice.
Okay.
Beach or mountains? You're going on a vacation. Where are you heading?
Well, I'd go to the beach because maybe I could see Tyler or Corey and near our. That's why I say beach today.
Very
But
good
actually,
answer.
Give me the plains.
Yeah. Stay in Lubbock.
Give me the plains.
Your favorite book?
The one I finished yesterday. That's say pick your favorite kid.
Sure. I can tell you mine.
I finished David McCullough's biography of John Adams. It was really, really good.
Okay. Very neat. Your favorite TV show? I don't know how you have time to watch TV shows, but if you do, who's your favorite?
This was. I don't watch a lot of regular TV, but my favorite show was Andy Griffith.
Great show.
or Columbo.
Okay. Very
I'm
nice.
out of it. I am so out of it.
No. Those are great. Okay. Two more. Your favorite Texas Tech tradition?
I have two. One is the Texas Memorial, which we always have on homecoming weekend when we gather to remember the students that we've lost that year.
Mhm.
It is one of the most moving experiences you can have if you're a Red Raider, and the staff and faculty. The other one is when the horse comes out on the field at a football game.
Very nice.
I get goosebumps every time.
Great answer. And then finally, your favorite Texas Tech sporting event you've attended as president thus far?
I have to go back to the Final Four.
Okay.
That was great. Again, I can't give one. I'm sorry. The other one was Crabtree's catch in 2008.
Very nice.
And this year, getting to the Elite Eight. There's so many.
Yeah. Sure.
Going to the World Series in baseball was great. I could go on and on and on. There's a bunch of them. But probably
Excellent answers.
Crabtree, Final Four.
Very nice.
President Schovanec, I actually have a selfie on my phone of me and you outside of the team hotel at the Final Four in Minneapolis, and so it's one of my favorite selfies, man. It's a great memory that pops up every year. So I'm not. I figured you wouldn't remember me, but I remember that moment fondly.
I do remember the moment.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
So
awesome.
what? I think we'll be there next year.
We're
For next year, if you'd ask me that question, I'd have to say, well, was it being in the Big 12 football championship game?
You're
Didn't
exactly
see it,
right.
or the final, or the national championship. I think both of those are in our future.
Very neat.
That's great, man. Well, Dr. Schovanec, thank you so much for your
You're very
time. We really enjoyed getting to speak with you and learn about your career and what Texas Tech means to you, and just your insight as well is so valuable to us and our listeners. So we can't thank you enough, and you're always welcome here on the Broadway Shuffle. We really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank
All
you,
right.
President Schovanec. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you,
it.
President Schovanec, and
Thank you.
we hope everyone enjoyed this, and we'll see you guys next time on the Broadway Shuffle. Wreck 'em.